I felt a certain way inside of me, and then I interpreted it as excitement, where some other person could feel the same way and just interpret it as stress or nervousness. And then that, just the interpretation, would impact how you show up and how you act. Because then I felt excited, so I thought to myself that I just cannot wait to go on stage and do the speech. So when I went on stage, I was doing my best and I was showing up for the people. Whereas when you start just thinking to yourself that you feel stressed, and then when you show up, you're less likely to also show up as your best self, because you feel like, I'm nervous, maybe I'll forget some words, and then you increase the likelihood of you forgetting some words. So I also wanted to mention that in all of this, the psychological interpretation, or how we interpret our emotions, also matters. Welcome everyone to LifewithLiza podcast. Our mission at LifewithLiza is to share people's stories and the challenges that they have overcome, so that those who are listening in can get the strength, the courage, and the hope to be their better selves. Today, I wanted to thank you for showing up for our daily special edition episodes and for being part of this beautiful and growing community of LifewithLiza podcast listeners who are dedicated to becoming their best selves. And the topic of today's podcast episode is stress. How to deal with stress, what is stress, and let's dive deeper into it. I think the first thing that I wanted to stress in this episode is that what is stress? And I think what a lot of people forget is that all emotions that we have and all things that we do experience, they do have evolved with some purpose. So actually stress could actually be quite a good thing, because we experience stress when we are under certain threat, and it engages us in a certain behavior that increases our chances of survival. And actually short-term stress is quite beneficial for us. The problem that we experience nowadays is that lots of people are continuously stressed. So we just feel stress in the background all the time without even realizing it. And I can personally feel it with my consultancy work at Accenture. So many times you just have so much work that you feel this constant stress in the background, and you feel it without even realizing it. And only when you take a break or you go on vacation where you probably get to turn off, you realize that you've been stressed without even realizing it. And that is very detrimental to our health, being long-term stress, and it's not something that we're even built for. But I do want for us to know that stress actually has that good purpose, and it has built evolutionary with a good intention. It's just the way it manifests in our current reality of the 21st century is not necessarily the best way. And also then I wanted to mention, we've just discussed the distinction between the good stress, the good short-term stress that puts us into action, and the bad stress, which we could have in the background all the time, which is detrimental to our health. So I wanted to give some of the examples because I think it's way more tangible once I share my stories. So I remember when I was doing the public speeches in high school, because I also used to be the president of the student council, so I got to make speeches almost every week, and for the crowds from 10 people to 600, 1,000 people. So that was very interesting, and I've never felt nervous before or stressed before the public speech. And I was wondering, what is that exactly? Because I always felt very excited. And that's something that I always share with everyone around me. I just feel very excited. I cannot wait to go on stage and share my message. I feel this excitement in my body. And the interesting thing was that the stressful feeling, or that excitement feeling, almost has the same impact on us chemically. The nervousness before giving a speech, that's a bit of a stressful feeling, and excitement. But the only difference between those two is the interpretation that we give to them. So I felt a certain way inside of me, and then I interpreted it as excitement, where some other person could feel the same way and just interpret it as stress or nervousness. And then that, just the interpretation would impact how you show up and how you act. Because then I felt excited, so I thought to myself that I just cannot wait to go on stage and do the speech. So when I went on stage, I was doing my best and I was showing up for the people. Whereas when you start just thinking to yourself that you feel stressed, and then when you show up, you're less likely to also show up as your best self, because you feel like, I'm nervous, maybe I'll forget some words, and then you increase the likelihood of you forgetting some words. So I also wanted to mention that in all of this, the psychological interpretation, or how we interpret our emotions, also matters. And for me, I always try to think in terms of what works. And in terms of what works, is it bringing me closer to my goal or further from my goal? If I want to share my message with a group of people to whom I'm doing the public speech for, I want to show up as my best self. And if I interpret this feeling in me as excitement, it helps me to show up as my best self. And that's how I interpret it. And I know many of you might say, oh, but then you're lying to yourself because you really do feel nervous. The emotional, the chemical underlying in our bodies is the same. You're not lying to yourself, you're just helping yourself by interpreting it in the way that helps you to move close to your goals. And that's how I view it. And also, another takeaway or insight that I got into stress is that a lot of the times, stress is largely influenced by our physical factors, by what we've eaten, what we've drank, how we've slept, and that influences how we react to a certain event. Because I know that a certain stressful event can happen, and depending in what state I'm in, it will influence me in different ways. So let's say there is this all of a sudden huge deadline coming up, and if I've slept well, if I've eaten things that are good for me, I have not been drinking alcohol, I have not been drinking too much coffee, because coffee can also increase this stressful feeling in me personally, then I approach it with some kind of level even of not overwhelm and not stress, but I'm ready to jump on it. I'm ready to jump on the deadline and work. Whereas if I woke up on the wrong foot, on the wrong side of the bed, what is exactly the quote here? Then all of a sudden this huge deadline could be so stressful, so overwhelming, and I would not know how to cope with it. So I just wanted to know that stress is not that black and white. It really depends on the state that you're in, and then you will really respond to different stressful events in a different way. So what I do is I try to optimize what I eat. So I know that personally for me, and I would encourage everyone to just track it down and see what works for you. If I eat sugary foods, my mood changes like crazy. I'm also so much more prone to being way more emotional and overreact and be way more stressed about small things than if I don't eat sugar. So now if I have some important deadlines or some important things that I want to show up as my best self, I would definitely decrease the amount of sugar consumption and feel so much better. I would probably also prioritize my sleep. So I would go to bed early, and I also have a separate video on sleep, so you can check that one out if you want to go more in depth into how you can increase the quality of your sleep. But I would prioritize my sleep. I would decrease certain foods that cause more of these reactions in my body, and that would also make me show up to that stressful event or to that stressful thing that's happening in my life right now in the best way possible, and to be even excited about it. Because what's interesting is that another thought that's currently happening in the world is that we should avoid stress, and that we should always be in the safe space, and without realizing that stress could have a positive impact on our lives. And actually we grow the most under some stressful circumstances. We push ourselves to our new limits. We explore the parts of ourselves that we have never found through stressful events. Otherwise, if we're always doing something that's not stressful at all, we don't grow, we don't get to evolve, we don't get to build emotional resilience, we don't get to acquire new skills, we don't get to learn how to do things faster, better. So don't avoid stress, seek the positive stress in your life, realize that being long-term stress is not helpful for you, and optimize your physical health, your mental health, to be able to actually attack the stressful event that's happening in a good way, and not to be overwhelmed by it, but even to be grateful that it's happening, that you are given such a great opportunity to grow as a person. I think this video might be quite controversial on stress, because I do say that stress is good, and I hope you did get the meaning behind why stress is good, and I hope you will pay attention to some factors that impact how you feel, and start noticing the impact, start noticing the correlation between how you feel on the physical level and how you respond to stress. Thank you so much for joining in, for watching it. I hope, as usual, that you loved this episode. I hope so. Let me know if you did, and it would mean the world to me if you subscribe to this channel or follow this podcast. I'm trying to achieve 1,000 subscribers.